Hi, everybody. It's April 2021. Welcome to the final Fishtrap Fireside of the season. My name is Mike Midlow. I'm the program director here. Fishtrap Fireside is a monthly reading series featuring diverse voices from around Wallowa County, Oregon. It offers kind of a fresh look at what people of the West are thinking about and writing down. And this year, we've been able to offer Fireside wherever you are and whenever you want at fishtrap.org and on Fishtrap's YouTube channel. Next season, I hope the Fishtrap house here is filled with people again. But we've seen how so many have streamed Fireside this year online from all over the country. And going forward, we'll continue to provide online and in-person experiences. We've got all summer to kind of try to figure out how to do that. If you have ideas, let us know. This month's featured readers include two brand new voices to Fireside in Dustin Lyons and Adele Schott, plus longtime Fishtrap favorite, Pamela Royes. Before we get going, I want to thank Wallowa Lake Lodge for sponsoring Fireside this month. The Lodge is a historical building at the head of the lake. It's a beautiful spot. And from what I hear, they just built a brand new deck on the back. I can't wait to check that out. Thanks, Wallowa Lake Lodge. And for those of you keeping box score, we have a Fireside first this month. I love stats like this. Our first reader is Adele Schott. She is the fourth member of her family to read at Fishtrap Fireside. Her grandmother, Janie Tippett, her dad, Todd Nash, her brother, James Nash, and now Adele. It's a family of storytellers. Adele Schott calls Wallowa County the county, and also home. She was brought up a little bit feral on her family's multi-generational ranch, where she decided she wanted to be a cowboy when she grew up. And you know what, folks? She did. Besides cowboying around the West, Adele has been, among other things, a cocktail waitress in downtown Austin, an exchange student in Buenos Aires, a van-dwelling surfer in Mexico, a culinary student in Texas, and most recently, a wife and a mother to the three best men she's ever known. Adele has always loved to write. Mostly, she writes lists. But sometimes she finds quiet space to write down her musings, recipes, and experiences. Those are some of her favorite moments. Adele told me that Fishtrap Fireside is the first time she has read original work out loud to strangers. And I know you're all at home right now, but would you just in your living room, just put it together for Adele Schott? Yay! Hi, Adele. Welcome to Fishtrap Fireside.
Thank you. Thank you for the applause. It's helpful.
It's great to see you. Would you share us a little story tonight?
Yes. So I have two things I'm going to read. This first one is my attempt at a poem about the complicated relationship I have with Wallowa County. So here we go. This place. Are you from here? They ask. Born and raised, I say. So lucky. To be from here is fortunate, but I am of this place. I was stretched and sunburnt into a girl over seasons of work and play. Work and play that was dirty and full of life. I survived in a bubble, carried by 1,000 mothers and protected by a dead-end road. I took for granted beauty and was humbled by storms. I left to find myself, make something of myself, prove that I mattered. I came back to attach my roots and get shaken by storms. I left to find gems that I could bring back and sacrifice at the feet of mountains. I came back with fool's gold that only showed its true colors in the reflection of a lake. I left with a stranger, such a rare commodity, still so much to prove. And I came back bruised and in need of a bubble, a soft place to fall. This place is not soft. Prairie grasses are sharp in the fall. But it took me in, embraced me, and said, be worthy, I watched more, talked less, felt more, and worked harder. I left this place and let it hold me while I discovered the world. I came back when it was time to raise a family. My children did not come from me, but are of me, and so they will be of this place too. So, this next thing is just a little story that I wrote about my time in Troy. I worked for the Anchor Bar Ranch back in that epic winter we had a few years ago. It's called Dead Calf Dream. I made a pie, and it was the first time in 2 months that I had wished I was not alone. Although, if I'm being honest, I would have been disappointed in whoever tried to praise me for making a pie if they had been there. There isn't a gesture grand enough to validate my self-admiration when something emerges from the oven that strikes any resemblance to what I intended it to be. Bakers are chemists, and I am not made for following those kinds of rules. Later, I will marry a man of science who loves rules. But right then, I was alone and not sharing my pie. I had an hour to sleep before the next night check, and probably just a few minutes more than that before the fire needed more wood. I slithered into my bedroll and pulled up the quilt so that the wool wouldn't scratch my wind-chapped face. I woke up and saw my breath like smoke above me. Shit. I slept through my alarm. The house was freezing. I'll deal with that later. I pulled on my coveralls over the top of the same leggings I had been wearing for days. Hat, headlamp, thrift store coat now covered in all the bodily fluids a cow has to offer. Another bite of pie, straight from the plate, a swig of cold coffee before I scatter out the door. Shit, it's cold, and it's been snowing again. My mind juggles between the fear of disappointing my boss and the fear of proving all those voices in my head that they were right. I am too selfish and lazy for this kind of work. I grab the spotlight from the barn before I head up the hill. I almost don't need it now, as I can see the elk trotting up over the horizon just above the hay feeders. They had been on the alfalfa again. There's 40 heifers in this lot, all pregnant with their first calf, teenage mothers, and I am their midwife. My boss had done his last check just before dark and had dialed the landline to tell me that the solid black heifer, the one that had a little bit more ear to her, looked pretty loose in the back end and was starting to bag up. Her number is 825. I'll see you in the morning. Call if you need anything, he had tiredly mumbled, but I knew he meant it. I shined my light over the black bodies and glowing eyes, seeing only tagged calves snuggled in straw piles. No one was bawling. I started to sigh relief and justify my extra dose of sleep when I made the top of the hill. She stared straight at me, and I killed the light. 825 and her frozen dead calf were easy enough to see through the sheet of snow now falling and the first light of day coming down. Her eyes were wild, from pain, confusion, fear, loss. I don't know for sure, but she wouldn't let me come any closer. She nudged the small black body and cried, hoping to hear or see signs of life. Over and over again, she circled and nudged and bawled. Sometimes heifers don't lick their newborn calves soon enough, and the sack stays over their nose. They suffocate. Sometimes they're born on wet ground and freeze to it before they get a chance to nurse. Other times they're stillborn, never move at all. I don't know what happened to this calf. I was sleeping with a belly full of pie. She was a good mother, and I knew that we had a twin calf in the river pasture below. We would skin this poor dead creature she had grown and drape its hide over an abandoned calf's back. tie it in place with twine, and lock them in together until she was convinced it was her own. She would let it nurse and would raise it until fall. It is from a gritty, dark, and understanding place that this can feel like a slice of redemption. And believe me, it does. It is years later. I am married to a man of science, and together we have calved out hundreds of cows. Some of them even have our own brand. And when I wake in the middle of the night to the sound of our infant son, it is not love or duty that shoots me upright from my sleep. Those come second, after I shake away the dead calf dream. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Adele. I remember that winter well and your photos from it. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Fishtrap tries to provide as many opportunities for all sorts of folks to tell anybody's story. Everybody's welcome here. And we do that by providing a lot of different events, free events, and also workshops. We have a couple writing workshops coming up that I want to let you know about. We still have 2 seats available for a 4-week online writing workshop coming up April 7th. It's called Land Beneath Your Feet, Writing with Nature, with one of our new favorite instructors, Karen Ovanen. Again, it starts Wednesday, April 7th. You can learn all about it and grab one of those last 2 seats at fishtrap.org. And on Saturday, May 8th, Mining Your Life for Laughter with Bob Balmer. We can also use a little laughter these days. Again, you can learn all about that and save your spot at fishtrap.org. And also Fishtrap's flagship program, Summer Fishtrap, the 34th Summer Fishtrap is coming up in July, and there are still plenty of spots left in all the great writing workshops there. We have a new, we always have writing workshops in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, sometimes lyrical essay. This year we have a children's literature writing workshop. I want you to check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Go to fishtrap.org and learn it all. All right, our next reader. It was in a small defunct timber town in Southwest Washington where Dustin Lyons was raised that he developed an unshakable case of posy. So he carried his big shaggy head full of words and affected insight to the English literature department at the University of Washington. Graduation came, and with it, a desire to see the world. A decade of seasonal work in Alaska, along with several forays into Asia and Latin America, produced countless journals chock full of nearly uninterpretable masterwork. In response to these literary triumphs, he decided to shift gears and study shoemaking, eventually co-founding Elkhist Leather. I'm wearing a pair right now. A lifelong affinity for critters and wild places eventually drew Justin to the base of Chief Joseph Mountain, where he owns a tumble-down cabin on a couple uncombed acres. The words keep coming, and he does his best to intelligibly lay them down. Wow, Dustin, thanks for letting me try to say the word intelligibly.
You did well.
Thanks. What you got for us? What you got for us today?
I got a batch of pieces written over the course of the last few months. The first one being First Growth. Tarry ruts and golden medians flying by. It didn't take long for my eyes to stray from the straight and narrow road, stretching out between towns, cities, mountains, log yards. I couldn't help but notice the verges, thick in a clutter of greens, browns, yellows, reds, shadows and unconfined pneumatic play. I began to distinguish Salal from Oregon grape, huckleberry from buckthorn, how witch's hair becomes blacktail, becomes deer fern. It all started with a breathless tremolo, sat me on my knees in helpless hallelujah. For these spires of fir, of maple and birch, of poplar, pine, heaven and earth. Something delicate as maidenhair, hardy as hazelnut, vital as lungwort. It gave me the whole story, the under to the over to the back again, Dominion, decay, dominion, decay, dominion, decay. I stopped worrying about death, my own anyway. I left the road on foot, giddy as a fawn, followed the patterns, peeled back the layers, thought the wildwood deep as night. I emerged at a clearing, a bustered jangle of sheared trunks and shredded limbs. My God, my behemoths, my vines and blossoms, little more than a bouffant of bangs meant to mask a missing head. Is there a more painful pairing than that of the heart's infinitude with the reckoning of the mind? I recall those boyhood forays into the Cascades, a high lake valley in the land of wild goats, among its other unbroken beasts. It was a place where the saws, cables, towers, and copters never got to. God's country, my father called it. I'd never seen him happier, or perhaps us kids, shin high in the diamond rush of Mountain Creek, shoulder high in the glossy green of Snowgrass Meadow, over our heads among twisted, moldering towers in dark, trackless thickets and the numbing cyan depths of Goat Lake. We're too restored in our inherent animal talent for joy to be bothered. Lodestones, each to their own. From the passenger's side of Papa's log truck, I found mine. My reason and cure, my disquiet. From where I sit now, studying the tree line at twilight, searching my mind for words, zest of memory, sprig of insight, milk of madness. It's all here, exact in its muddle, effortlessly fraught. Once you've peered through the beauty strip, left the road, you can't not. And here's the second one, entitled Down Trail. On the flaky jigsaw husk of an ancient ponderosa, we place our hands. For a moment, salvation from it all. Deep inhales of crisp consistency, autumnal. Hands fall, eyes meet. Dew gathers, dripping from the morning moss of your helpless gaze into the broken, bleeding ground of my own. Nothing left to do but hold each other, with arms winded from chasing, whims, ghosts, dreams, love. Nevertheless, they tighten, quaver, fall to pieces. I love you, little woman. A rising gasp from the living, slipping into the soft, shrill wheeze of the dying. I love you so much. You know that, don't you? Lovers for a while, once wild, angry, hurt, growing erst, like the mountain creek that scores our burst, roaring from peaks into a basinal evaporation of passion. To see the world from the air, up there in the crowns, shaking what's dead to the ground. A pairing croak, a loving crack. For us, the Clark's nutcracker has not but a squall. Perhaps we shouldn't be here at all. Perhaps the good cheer of the chickadee, flitting in the alder and paling gooseberry, is simply a lilting jag. The beating heart's drunken dirge for youth and its romantic fancies. No, of course not. It is as it's always been, foregone, impermanent, beautiful, as your daylight to verdure to black moon eyes, your ruby ducks, your tear-wet freckles, your black braid, wearing a flicker feather I plucked from the duff. Ghost forest. How long can one cling to these salty snags before they turn to stone? Sucking at wounds laid by the flood, mud and more mud. It's an old story, the fated purge, a plate of earliest promise sunk hard and low. Out of the blue and into the mantle, a bloody bore, and so it goes. On a froth for solid ground, spit out and spit up, the glaring options lead inland, toward gilt rainbows and lace-wing greens, corniced mounts and blooming things. Even so, I can't seem to turn my back on the roar. I can't imagine the light at the end of the proverbial tunnel having anything but the quality of sundown over the Pacific. Poised, quenched, sung asleep by the gale force keen of so many looming moons and mole crickets. With one foot purchased on the sod of youth and the other swept under tow, I've lost much of my curl and color, some of that sleep and sanguinity that put the sugar on my tongue and the sweat on my brow. It's all about survival now. So I ration my heart like salt pork, dance a peg leg shimmy for the earthworms and unearthly, and sing my song to the albatross. Oh, existence, you sneaker, you briny blitz. Frenzied is the laughter when you bounce me on your knee. You've got my nose, my bones, all my blown kisses, eventually. And finally, Chimera Obscura, as in Chimera, Chimera Obscura. Studied on the back wall of a timeless Saudi, a brood of pinhole scenes. Mother of sons, of doddering bodies, moons, stars, exploding things. Stories born with lives in tow and made of hatchling wings, of sleep in the eyes, gaping maws, ears that hear everything. Persona to person, Dustin to dust, upside down, outside in, prick of light, light of lust, clawing walls that go unseen. The pits, the prats, the leaps for love, swollen joints, remembering, flops and phosphorescence, whale falls that sinking, sing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dustin. That was great. Hey, if these stories and poems from Adele and Dustin have inspired you to think about, maybe I should share my stories with other people. Fishtrap partners with Circle of Seasons zine. It's a quarterly publication where folks can just share what stories, poems, recipes, drawings, all sorts of different stuff. You can learn more about Circle of Seasons at fishtrap.org and how you could submit your work to it. I also want to say that we just concluded the Big Read. It was 5 weeks of programming surrounding a great work of literature sponsored by the National Endowment for the Arts. This year's book was In the Heart of the Sea, The Tragedy of the Whale Ship Essex. And because we did everything online this year, you can go back, if you missed anything, you can go back and watch it all at our website. There's some really cool stuff about sailor superstitions, whaling in Oregon, all sorts of stuff. I think you should check it out. All right, let's get to our final reader. Very excited. Pamela Rice was here from the very first season of Fishtrap Fireside. She lives on a farm with her husband Skip and an undetermined number of cows, horses, mules, dogs, cats, ducks, chickens, and honeybees, no pigs. Pam loves planting things, baking sourdough bread, playing her ukulele, I haven't heard that yet, and writing. She is the author of the memoir Temperance Creek, which is a local favorite, and is currently writing a novel for young adults and is working on a book of essays about people, food, and landscape. What's going on, Pam? Good to see you.
Thanks for asking me to read tonight, and thank you, Dustin and Adele. That was great. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a warning. Viewer discretion advised. I can't remember a time when I didn't garden. Even as a child, I claimed a corner of my mother's backyard flower beds, scratching the Dakota loam with shallow jabs and wildly riding the top of the shovel blade like a bucking horse. Reverently, I opened the seed packets my mom handed me, the big seeds like peas, cucumbers, and pumpkins. In shallow trenches and hills, I covered and patted the seeds down, sprinkled them with water, and waited, spellbound that one seed could grow a pumpkin patch, possibly a coach. And while mom tended her zinnias, snapdragons, and red geraniums, those bright, fragrant, heroic beds of flowers, I watched the black earth, waiting for it to bulge, for the green sprouts to break through and send forth leaves. We were outside. There were honeybees and butterflies and ladybugs. The blue air hummed, the brilliant sun shone, and under my feet was the feel of the earth, warm and sensuous, quickening something essential in my young spirit. A large part of my discipline, my education, took root in that garden. Small, important things were learned there. Through the years, from wherever I happened to be, included in my letters home were lively sketches concerning my gardens, stories of 10-foot tall corn stalks in the Willamette Valley, basketball-sized cabbages in Alaska, papayas, pineapples, and mangoes in Costa Rica. Eventually, the letters included pictures of my own barefoot happy children, clutching ears of corn, sitting upon coach-sized pumpkins. Contained photographs of our bulging root cellar filled with canned and pickled fruits and vegetables and casks of fermenting beer and wine. For the last 40 years, my garden has been situated along the bottom of a steep canyon and next to a clear rushing river. For the last 40 years, I have gardened in the company of snakes. Yesterday, I killed my third rattlesnake of the year. I didn't see her till I was halfway over the top of her, one leg in the air, the other presumably still on the ground. Cartoonishly, I levitated, landing awkwardly, the edge of my boot connecting with the muscly rope of her diamond-scaled form. Male or female, I can never discern, but somehow they're always female. She didn't have time to coil, didn't rattle, didn't strike, and I could have walked away, could have captured her somehow, taken her up the road a few miles and turned her loose. I could have done either one of those things. I didn't. Hearing my involuntary shriek, my dog Charlotte, napping in the sun, ran to my rescue, choosing us directly over the top of the, by now, thoroughly provoked snake. Having doctored a snake-bit dog only the year before, I shouted, commanding her to lie down. Charlotte, thinking I was angry with her, instead disappeared at a dead run around the corner of the house. I marked the snake's location and raced to find a weapon. When I returned, shovel in hand, the rattler was coiled, poised to strike, and decidedly defensive. Brandishing her buzzing tail, she held it high, the warning rattle audible above the sound of the river. A courteous gesture, the rattle, given my dogs and my own carelessness, and given my obvious intent as we locked eyes. With shovel aloft, I approached, her anvil-shaped head pivoting to follow the movement of the shovel blade, her hooded eyes fixed, unblinking, merciless, I thought. Generally, I don't think of myself that way, merciless. Yet, it was I who was holding the shovel. I have a great respect for the species, and whenever I encounter one on the trail, I give them a wide berth and walk on. But snakes are territorial creatures, hunting and living out their lives within a mile of their den. We would meet again. and perhaps under more dire circumstances. Have you ever been harvesting a bucket of tomatillos, dreamily anticipating a batch of salsa verde, and been brought up short by a rattler staring at you from amidst the vines and giving you some serious stink eye? I have. I didn't want to kill her, but just as I'd defend a lamb from a coyote, a chicken from a hawk, my snowball bush from marauding aphids, if I wanted to garden in this canyon, my position seemed clear. To keep me, my guests, my family, and dogs safe, I'd weighed the cost, shouldered the responsibility, widened my stance, staked my claim, and set my perimeters. And within them, there wasn't room for both of us. One of us had to go. With the shovel, I struck, first pinning and then severing her head, burying both it and her body in an unmarked grave. To take a life, any life, I believe has consequences. And sometimes in the dark of the night, the deed and the beguiling intent serpent have returned to haunt me. Because no matter what we believe to be good or evil, no matter what we deem precious, like my garden, the rattlesnake, like the wolf, the hawk, the aphid, is created to do what it does and to do it perfectly. Each one of us absorbed, occupied with one common desire: to live, to thrive, to survive. Neither hero nor villain, it turns out I am just another animal jockeying for position. I dread these encounters. And when a year or two goes by and I don't see one, I breathe a sigh of relief and count my blessings. Yet, there is a small irrational letdown, which must have something to do with having girded myself all summer for battle, only to have my opponent scratch. Secondly, though her presence here tests and challenges me on many levels, she is also part of the magic, mystery, and thrill of this place, and love it or leave it, essential to the experience. 2 summers ago, while entertaining a friend from Hawaii on the front deck, I spotted a snake crossing the overgrown lawn. Seizing my .22 pistol, I took aim, fired, and missed. When the snake failed to coil, I pursued it across the grass, blasting away like a gunslinger. Lucky for the snake, I am a poor shot, because it was only when it paused to look at me, when I saw the roundness of its eye, the pattern of its skin, that I realized it was a bull snake, a friend. We are allies, the bull snake and I. Non-poisonous, they eat mice, and like me, do not suffer the presence of rattlesnakes in their territory. From the safety of the porch, I heard my delighted girlfriend calling home to report, "It's really Western here." And I swear the bull snake, realizing she was no longer endangered, winked at me. All that long summer, Beatrice, the bull snake, kept reappearing. I'd look up from the bean patch, she'd be there. Squat to pull a weed, she was 10 feet away, round-eyed and curious. I never saw a rattler or a rodent that summer. And when she didn't return the following year, I was disappointed. If it would do any good, I'd post a sign, "Beware rattlesnakes, enter at your own risk." And on it include a tally with the current head count. Because I garden in the company of snakes, I carry a hoe. I lightly brush it over the tops of the strawberry and green bean beds before stooping to harvest. I keep the lawn short, the paths between the vegetables wide, and cautiously, yet gratefully, cultivate my personal interpretation of Eden. Thank you. That's it.
Rattlesnake Gardening with Pam Royes, the hot new series on HBO next fall.
Oh, I'm going to get hate mail. I know it. I just know it.
That was wonderful. Hey, folks, if you enjoyed this Fishtrap Fireside episode and want to know more, get in touch with us at fishtrap.org, or you can become a fish trapper and be a part of the Fishtrap family for as little as $5 a month and get to enjoy discounts on a lot of events and things. You can go to Fishtrap and learn more about that. And this concludes season 8 of Fishtrap Fireside. I can't even believe it. I want to thank, again, Wallowa Lake Lodge for sponsoring this month's episode, and all of you for taking the time to watch this. If you didn't tune in, there'd be no reason to do this. So I really appreciate it. Again, my name is Mike. I'm the program director here at Fishtrap, and get in touch anytime. And go to fishtrap.org to see what we're doing this spring and summer. And we'll see you again next fall for the ninth season of Fishtrap Fireside. Take care, everybody. Have a good summer.